All right, James, you want to talk about some brain science and hypnosis? I know you're doing a presentation here soon at HypnoThoughts Live. Is that correct?
That's right. And you know what? You were having a conversation with somebody that piqued my interest
Mm.
because it overlaps with a topic that I'm working on studying and something I just found out about, which is the what and the where stream and the way the brain processes where information and what information. So where am I? What's going on?
And those are two
Um,
different, two different things, is what you're saying in this hypothesis.
they split in where they get processed in the brain. So yeah, I'm talking about this along with some other stuff, but it's such a practical thing for clinical hypnotists, and it doesn't seem to have like a widespread. It
I've
ain't out
never heard
there
of it.
yet.
Yeah, I've
Um,
never even heard of it. So, I'm somewhat familiar with some neuroscience stuff. I'm no neuroscientist by any means, but can you give us a quick overview for the layman here? What are
right.
the implications of the fact that the brain processes what and where in different parts of the brain?
That's right. And then maybe at some point I can share images. We could try that too.
Yeah, we can screen share if you want. Yep.
So think of it from an evolutionary standpoint. That where processing takes place up top, dorsal or parietal lobe, top of the brain, like dorsal fin, right? You know, not that we have them. Wouldn't we look good if we did?
That would be so cool.
But more top of the brain, we process where information. So that's the spatial stuff. Where am I in space? And so I'm using my own head as a to demonstrate. I hope this is good for the vast audience at home. But the where stuff is happening up here. And as you know, midbrain and the cortex, there's all the sensory motor stuff. And so it makes sense that, your vision comes in, goes all the way to the back of your brain. And in the back of your brain, it splits. Some of it goes up, some of it goes down.
Hmm.
So the stuff that goes up is the where stuff, and that gets processed next to your sensory motor stuff, which makes sense, right?
Hmm.
Because you need to
Yeah,
know,
where's your
so
body in space,
where am I in
proprioception.
space, what's going on, and then it's going to go, danger or safety. But it
Hmm.
needs to do that pretty quick, right?
Hmm.
And so a beat slower is all the what stuff, and the what stuff happens in your temporal lobes. So instead of top of brain, it's happening.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't know enough to say, oh, that's more tied into language and hearing, but it kind of makes sense. So the semantic parts of the brain,
Right.
which is, that's the what stuff. Like,
Right. Like you're walking along and you see something on the ground and you jump. Ah, you don't even know what it is. And it's a rope. But that registers like a split second later. It's not a snake, it's a rope.
bingo, bingo. So that's what got me fascinated when I first came across this. Really very, very, maybe a few weeks ago at this point, um, as part of the folks that I'm researching, who I take seriously, because I'm like, if hypnosis is really a thing, there's got to be a bioevolutionary reason for it. Otherwise, we're just making stuff up, and that doesn't feel particularly good to me. So I don't want to hear from other hypnotists that hypnosis is this or that. I mean, I do in a collegial way, but I want to hear from the neuroscientists, right? Like,
Right.
what are they saying? So what I keep coming to over and over is that hypnosis is kind of a remnant or a version or a parallel to foraging behavior. And we learn to approach or avoid, right? I'm going towards that or I'm going away from that.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to learn because of approach and avoid, this is good for me, this is bad for me, that
This mushroom is tasty. This mushroom will kill me.
all the variations on that, right?
But this other
Initially,
mushroom's really fun,
yeah,
but maybe not for everyday eating.
the
Okay, so
psychedelic ape theory,
yes.
Terrence McKenna and all that. Really fascinating stuff. We had to have a way to compare. We developed comparison over time that became memory, right?
Hmm.
So initially we sucked at foraging, right? You had 50-50 odds.
Oops. Yeah. You don't want to be the first ape to try which mushroom.
No, you don't want to be the first on a lot of things. But it's very interesting to realize, like, yeah, they happen at different speeds. And
Hmm.
I'm trying to, what was the conversation? This is only a couple days ago. Do
No,
you
I'm
remember
having a
it?
hard time remembering exactly what the conversation was here. Um, not sure. Not sure. But the
It
different
made,
speeds. So the what and the where are different speeds. So yeah,
yeah,
what's the implication of that for like, for like a phobia or anxiety, something? Is there something there that like,
I think there can be. That's why I wanted to talk with you about it to kind of explore different ways it hits.
mhm,
Like my personal story with it is now I'm aware I become overwhelmed with where processing.
hmm.
So, I remember going to an IKEA once and having to leave and go out. I went outside, took my shoes off. This was before I had ever touched hypnosis or knew anything about grounding or anything of that nature.
Oh yeah.
But I got
This could have been
so
on my post about centering yourself and how that helps with overstimulation
overstimulation. Yes.
from the senses, like from a perspective of neurodivergence. A lot of people with autism, ADHD, sensitive
Yes.
people, we get overstimulated by various things. It could be
That's
lights
it.
that flicker at a certain frequency that other people can't even detect, or the sound of the refrigerator that other people can't even hear, or the sound of
Yes.
somebody chewing.
Yeah.
It's really annoying, right? So there's certain sensory inputs that can be really annoying or overstimulating. And what I was noticing is when I get really centered, for me, that's like a centered in the belly with belly breathing, like a qigong
Yes.
kind of thing. That makes me no longer oversensitive in certain ways. Like I noticed I was driving on the highway and I had the windows all the way down. I normally do not do that because it's so loud and the wind hitting my face is really annoying.
Yeah.
But I allowed that to stay that way because I was really centered and didn't bother me. So I think that's where we
Interesting.
got on this train before of like,
That's exactly it. This is
yeah,
it. Yes, that was it.
okay,
This
yeah,
so that's a
right,
cool thing to realize. And as a it's like, all of us are the wounded healers, and we figured out how to hack or work our own nervous system
right.
in spite of being like ridiculously sensitive people
That sensitivity can be a strength, right?
and turning it into a strength. Like I'm guessing like you and I I got picked on as a kid and the whole everything
Oh
that
yeah.
came with that. And so I had to develop lateral skills. I wasn't going to beat anybody up.
No,
So,
I wasn't going to work for me either. Yeah.
right,
I wasn't going to be
so
successful at that strategy.
no, the ass whooping, we'll leave that to others.
Right. Right. Okay. So getting back to this where and what different processing
Yeah,
differently in the brain. The first thing I thought of, I don't know if this is related or not, but so in neurolinguistic programming, we have
yeah,
this idea of modalities and submodalities. So modalities are
right,
the senses, and the submodalities are aspects of those senses, especially in imagination.
yeah.
Uh, and one of the key submodalities is location, where. So, for
Yeah.
instance, if you ask somebody, where is the picture of yourself that's not
Oh,
confident? And it's like over here. And where is the picture of yourself that's confident? It's over here. And like, you start moving things around,
yeah,
people feel very different. That's often one of the main interventions, just move a picture or move something in your space to another
yeah.
location.
And so that's gonna, as soon as you do that, so we have to talk about engrams for a moment. or what's called memory traces. And this is something I'm going to go into in my talk a little more, or we could call it predictive processing, because that's a very sexy term. But think of it this way: let go of the model of the brain that everything is, you can break it down into parts and it's all localized. The reality is the brain is way more networked than that.
Right.
Like, yes, certain chunks do uh, certain tasks, and it's, and the cliche is like fear lives in the amygdala. Well, that's
Mm.
not accurate. It's partly accurate, but a whole bunch of neurology lights up for any given situation. And so what the brain does is it takes a snapshot, terrible term, but it makes a little snapshot of what your body is doing at any given moment. So when you're having that great peak experience of who you are, or that shitty version of your identity, it's not just a cognitive thing that's recorded, it's all the feedback in your interoception. It's, where your body is in space, your breathing levels, your heart rate, what your endocrine system's doing, all that is tied together. So Antonio Damasio has a term for it that I'm forgetting at the moment. I have been referring to it as autonomic memory. So, what your body's doing, and what it looks like in the brain is a weird long zigzag of, it's a neural network that's weird and complicated looking, of that moment. And so if you do that NLP technique that you're describing, you're breaking it in two. You're keeping the part, maybe you're keeping the you're having the person upload the who, the what do you want to be, and where are you, and you're recombining them in a better way. So
Right.
maybe they have half of it, and by breaking the link, it's like, okay, I want to be great, but I don't feel that I can.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's fine. You want to be great, but you don't feel like you can.
Right.
Would you be willing to feel like you could be great over here? Sure. Okay, feel like you can be great over here. You
Right.
have them do that, and you've got that new association.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, yeah, that is why that works. So as much as NLP is not even wrong according to science, like they debunked it years ago, parts of it are good.
Yeah.
Parts
Yeah.
of it
Yeah.
have something,
Right.
and I'm
I
actually
mean, if it
hoping.
works, it works for some reason, right? Like if you're doing
Yeah,
something and you feel different or you start believing something that you didn't believe before, then something has changed. And so it's just a matter of what's going on in the brain, what's actually happening there.
we got
Um,
to have a better model for that, and
right.
um, I've the purpose of what I'm writing about is not to rehabilitate NLP. It
Right.
maybe that'll be a side effect. I don't know. Like, that's a little ambitious, but uh, my ambitions are to align hypnosis with Western medical practice in
Mm.
a non-metaphysical way. So, you know,
Mhm.
between you and me and anyone who ever watches this, I love the woo. And as hypnotists, we're exposed to it constantly, and all kinds of strange stuff can happen. But
Right.
I'm convinced in 2023 we can explain hypnotic work without resorting to woo, without resorting to metaphysics.
Right. 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 Yeah. There's something measurable, scientific, observable going on that we can refer to.
We're
Yeah.
just
So
using basic stuff that we know the brain, we know people change states. That's not
absolutely.
controversial in the slightest. Um,
The very least,
what's
sleeping and waking, and then
everything in
all the
between.
emotions. Yeah, everything in between.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah,
we
we know
know
we have a
people have,
sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic and
yeah,
or polyvagal version of that. And right.
not controversial. I
No.
mean, maybe polyvagal, whatever.
Yeah.
But the vagus nerve is the thing. Like,
We
that's
know the
cranial
vagus
nerve
nerve
10.
exists.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not being made up. That it communicates. That's interoception. Interoception is not controversial. How you measure it might be.
Sure.
And
Because it's
what
a
we've
subjective
tended
experience, right? The feeling of inside of your body, that's interoception.
we've tended yes, that's interoception, and we've tended to make that the objective set of senses, where we've tended to culturally make exteroception, perception, like vision and hearing, objective, uh,
Right.
which is a funny kind of, I don't know if it's a bias or, there's something to it. I mean, we can measure light waves and sound waves, and it's a little harder to measure. We don't have a scale for hunger other than, are you really hungry? Or are you full? Or
Right.
somewhere
Yeah.
in between. That
But even that's kind of interesting because, yeah, we sort of, in some ways, ignore or discount interoception as a sense. It might even be more than one sense, right? Because, you're starting to get all
there's
the
a ton of
details like
interoception.
pressure, heat,
Yes.
uh, you know, uh,
Pain, pleasure.
pain, the tension or relaxation of muscles,
Yeah.
sort of flows of sensation, which often are associated with emotions, like
All the stuff
butterflies in
that,
your stomach
yeah.
or heartache, like these sorts of things are felt
Yeah.
in
All
the
the stuff
body,
that gets attributed to chakral
or
ideas or
energy or
chi
chi,
or,
these sorts of
yeah,
things.
all
Right.
that
Yeah. It's
stuff.
flows of buzzing and vibrating sensation in the body. Right. There's something there. There's an experience there. So something's happening in some cell in your body when that's taking place. Uh,
And it's useful information.
right.
And so a big part of what I'm getting at, and this is going more into my paper than what we're talking about, but love them or hate them, Freud was just not even wrong. He was so far off base that by 2023, it's it's kind of like using Newtonian physics
Hmm.
to explain the world now. It's kind of it's not terrible. It still describes throwing a ball, and it
As long as
actually
you don't
just,
throw that ball near the speed of light,
yeah, don't do that, kid. Right.
or into a black hole or anything like that.
So if we go back to the time of Freud, you have to remember, like 100 years, 50 years before Freud, psychology was done by the physicists of the day. That's where we get like the unconscious inference ideas of Helmholtz, which is still a great idea, that, there's stuff going on and we're inferring and we're
Hmm.
putting the dots together. But what we've really got is the reflex arc, right? So up here we got this thing, and it's doing its stuff, and it's sending down signals, and they're coming back. Well, we shouldn't be discounting that half or just calling it unconscious.
Hmm.
It's the body's reporting in,
Right.
and it's way more robust. And so I think what happened, as far as I can tell from what I'm studying, is that Freud and his contemporaries, some of them like Santiago Ramon y Cajal, he's considered the father of neuroscience. He's the one who did all the great drawings of the nervous system. Like he drew this stuff by hand under a microscope. There's a pyramid
Yeah.
cell,
Wow.
like crazy stuff. Um, but Freud decided, I don't know how to go from from brain to mind. Like, how do we go from the bio side to somebody having a thought or writing poetry? So I'm not going to try to make that jump. I'm going to try to come up with a structure for what's going on in what he called the unconscious.
Hmm.
And that's where he came up with egoid, superego, repression, all that. Well, uh, repression isn't a thing, but inhibition is. From a neuro level. There's excitation and inhibition, and that's a real thing. And they didn't understand inhibition at the time. They understood excitation, but they didn't understand the tonic, the balance that we can pull and hold. So Freud took hypnosis out into metaphysical country when he decided to stop being a doctor and to develop psychotherapy. So he put hypnosis out in metaphysics, and it's had a foot there ever since. So it really depends on who you talk to. I work in a medical institution, and the psychiatrist I work under swears to me that she's agnostic about it, but I have my doubts. So that's a big part of why I'm writing the book, to say, hey, here's how to construct it in a way that doesn't rely on metaphysics.
Right. David Ruby will also be teaching at HypnoThoughts Live, and he's teaching something on how to reference scientific journal articles or how to find them on hypnosis, something like that. Yeah.
We talk about this a lot. Like, I lean on David a lot for this stuff. So I'm so glad he's going to be there. If anybody is watching this, go to David's talk, come to mine if this kind of thing interests you. So I've got it down to a 4-part model: the state change, which we talked about, interoception, exteroception, and then the last piece is predictive processing, which is memory. That the brain tries to keep us, it's called allostasis. It's like an advanced thermostat. If your thermostat can predict what you want next and go, oh, they're going to wake up in 20 minutes, start sending the bladder signal, start sending the hunger signal, whatever, in your particular case, or start noticing those things, letting them come through attentionally, become hypnopompic and the whole bit. And now you're awake, 3, 2, 1. Or you walk through the door, you see somebody you don't like, you turn around and, or you gird yourself. I need to have a difficult conversation. The brain's predicting for us all the time, feeding us what we want next. We call it habituation in the hypnosis world. And I was asking I've become friends enough with neuroscientists that I can ask them the questions, and they don't just shoot me down. So I said, well, to one of these folks, I said, in the hypnosis world, we talk about self-directed neuroplasticity. And for us, what it means is to depotentiate a pattern, to habituate into a new pattern. And he goes, James, we call that learning.
Right.
I go, oh, okay. So is that real? And he's like, yes, learning's real.
Learning's real. Wow.
Learning's
I was about to say, I thought, prediction. What are you saying? A predictive processing.
Predictive processing is
and if you make an error, right? Predictive processing error means I think I'm going to have this difficult conversation with this person. It's going to go really badly. And then you have a conversation that goes really well.
Bingo.
Whoa. That shattered my expectations. Now I've learned, oh, wow, it's actually safe to have difficult conversations with this person, or maybe in general, right?
Yeah. Learning is not limited to 2 + 2 = 4. Learning is very subtle. It's like, I just bought a new pair of shoes. Well, guess what? The other day I tripped coming up the stairs to our front house on my right foot. But I caught myself, and the next day tripped on my left foot. Haven't tripped since. Now I may trip again, but it's because I'm wearing new shoes and my feet have to learn these shoes are a little longer than my previous shoes. By how much? Probably a 1/4 inch or some minuscule amount.
Slight amount, right? But there's an adaptive process where the body's learning that new thing. And in the hypnosis context, of course, all we're doing is trying to create learning. I mean, Milton Erickson used to say that you don't put people into trance just to put them into trance. You put them into trance because it creates a valuable context for learning. Nice. The whole point of the trance is learning, is to create some new associations between two things, or to reframe something, or to have an experience in imagination that then feels easier to do in reality. These sorts of things.
That's the game. That's
Yeah.
like that hasn't changed. We just have better ways of explaining it now
Mm.
without saying some mystical process happens in the brain that we don't understand,
In
and
the
it
subconscious. Yeah.
the subconscious,
Right.
and all that's great. And like God knows I've done enough past life regression, and I love it. Like,
Mm.
who knew? I, but we don't have to resort to that um, in order to explain it,
Mm.
which is equivalent to saying it's unexplainable. We just know something happens. Well,
Right.
I think the
It's not
brilliance,
unexplainable. Maybe we didn't have the
yeah,
explanation, and now we have a better one with the
and
kind of
science is cool
neuroscience.
with that. It's like we can, if this
Mhm.
anesthetic works, cool. Let's try to figure it out. Like,
Right.
are there side effects and all that, or this drug?
Totally. There's
You
a lot
know,
of drugs that we don't quite know how they work. We know they do work, but we don't
but
quite know how yet, and we're still
yeah,
trying to figure it out.
causality is the son of a bitch. And but I'm judging that there's been what the philosophers of science call a demarcation problem. So that means where's the line between science and pseudoscience?
Mm.
And according to the dude on this, Karl Popper. Now there's a lot of other philosophers, but he's pretty bedrock in this area. That line is changeable and movable as we learn more things.
Mm.
And if you look at their research papers on interoception, it just it's been a field since the 1870s, but in the past 20 years, boom, the number of research papers has exploded.
Interesting.
So we have
Yeah,
more
one of the things
sciencey
I've heard
ways.
about interoception is that neurodivergent people, people with ADHD and autism, are often score really low on interoceptive ability. Uh,
Yeah,
and that was true for me.
I don't.
Like I didn't, I didn't know emotions had a bodily component until I did a
Uh,
Vipassana meditation retreat for 10 days and did a body scan meditation up and down and up and down and up and down. And then I left the retreat and I got a call from a creditor about some student loans at the time, a long time ago. And immediately I was like, oh, sensations in my chest. Oh, I didn't know. I didn't know
nice.
those were related to fear. Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like 20 something before I learned that. So I've done a lot of interoceptive deliberate practice to
Nice.
become aware of body sensations because I was totally dissociated from my body before that. And it's been an amazing thing for emotional intelligence and
Yeah.
gut, your gut feeling about something and so on.
Once you get context for it, it's a game changer.
Yeah. Right.
Like that's, like I work with a lot of folks where I work. Like one of my guys is schizophrenic and he is absolutely cut off from his body
Mm.
and doesn't want to go there, presumably trauma and whatnot. So best I can do is make him feel safe and loved and community and stuff like that. And, maybe in the long run, other stuff.
Yeah.
But like for me, so I have ADHD. It's for me, it's all about the attention. When I'm in something, like when you and I are doing this, feels great. We're on a roll, we're having a good conversation,
Yeah.
learning new things and all the ahas. And, you know, really hard to task switch.
Right.
And then, oh, but I got to start a new task. And once I'm in it, I can do it, but
Yeah.
really hard to get started. So I
Oh,
know,
yeah.
since I know that, there's a great, like, Mike Mandel thing for this. He was like, well, don't say I'm going to go to the gym for an hour. Just drive there. And,
Totally.
I mean, he said, just go for 5 minutes. For me for that to work, it's like, I'm just going to put my clothes in my truck. I'm just going to
Right.
drive in that direction. I'm just
Yeah.
going to go there. I'm just going to swipe the badge and go in. And, by
Yeah.
then I'm
Just
in.
one
But
tiny little step at a time. Yeah. I do
yeah,
wonder about, the neuroscience in that. Yeah. For me, this is something I think about a lot as well, because most of my clients are neurodivergent and struggling with productivity kind of stuff.
yeah,
Um, But yeah, the hyper focus, the hyper focus flow of like, I'm on
Right.
this train. And I want to keep going on this train for the next 7 hours.
Yeah.
Um, it's both a genius and a weakness depending on context. Now you look at it, right? Like
Totally.
if that
Yes.
train is scrolling Facebook, which is, one of my vices, it's like, I don't
Sure.
want to stop this process, even though it starts to feel terrible after about 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I just want to keep going with it. But if I can just
Oh
start
yeah.
anything else, right? Like, yeah, if I
Yeah.
go to the gym, I'm the same way. Like, I'm going to go for an hour once I'm there. Or if I'm starting to sit down and write on my book, it's like all I really need to do is get started for 5 or 10 minutes, and I'm on a roll. So I actually
That's the key.
schedule, yeah. So I
That's the key.
schedule 5 days a week to write with somebody else who's also writing a book, and we get on Zoom and we just write our own books, and we check in after
Oh,
half an hour,
right.
and
I've
then I
heard of
usually keep
that.
going after that.
Right. Oh, that's good. That's
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
I have
Relying on
heard of that.
somebody else to help you get into that zone
Right.
helps. But it does make me wonder about like, are certain brains more wired for that flow or that zone than others? I mean, there's got to be some difference there, some
Huge
neurological
variety with that.
maybe.
I
Yeah.
work with folks with Parkinson's sometimes, and that's your body literally stops making dopamine. But and so you see it show up in all the physiological ways, like
Mm.
the dyskinesia movements, and yeah, all the tremors and things like that. It's not difficult. Like I think of the extended mind model with a lot of the folks. The folks I work with are not middle age and cognitively intact. It's the opposite. They have dementia, and their cognitive level is slipping away. But I can be the so it's like the philosophy of mind idea of extended mind, that your calculator or this thing, I don't know if you've ever seen one of these before, you know,
Yes. A
this
phone.
is it's an extended mind because it has stuff that's useful to you. It's a tool
Mm.
that you can use.
Yeah.
But people can be extended mind for each other. So I have a
Right.
woman that loves to dance. She can't do it on her own. She'll come, we'll play bingo. I'll play Love Shack. Man, she is up dancing for the whole song, and it scares the shit out of the other caregivers to some degree, but they're used to it now.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
know I'll just entrain her. We get going.
Mm.
I don't even have to do it anymore. She'll do it on her own now.
Oh wow.
But, now it's like she hears the music, boom.
Hmm.
So what
Right. Yeah. So that extended mind.
happens?
Yeah, we tend to think the mind is just in this gray and white matter up in the brain,
Yeah,
but
but we clearly
that's
influence
just,
each other.
we clearly influence each other. Yeah. The way I often think of extended mind is the idea there's only certain conversations I can have with certain people. Like I just can't even get my mind around the topic without
Yeah,
that conversation partner. And then I try to explain what I talked about with somebody else, and I can't do
can't
it
do it.
because we don't have the shared language. We don't have like,
Yeah,
I can't even access the thoughts sometimes though.
yeah,
Oh,
it's true. You like the auric field stuff explains it well. Like, oh, you just tapped into the other person's auric field and you're off and running, and then you walk by someone else and they're a buzzkill, and you know energy
right.
vampire or whatever.
Or we could talk about that, yeah, from a perspective of like emotional contagion, or you know,
Yeah,
which is a social psychology
or
phenomenon. You're
mirror
around
neurons
somebody,
or
yeah,
attachment.
mirror neurons, yeah. You're around somebody feeling a certain way, and it's somewhat influential. I feel like some of us are more prone to that than others. Some people are more like independent of whatever anyone else is around them, and other people are very much empathetic and step into whatever other
Yeah,
people are experiencing. But there is certainly something there. You walk into a room where you can cut the tension with a knife because people are at each other's throats right before you got
yeah,
in. That's a very different thing than you walk into a party and everyone's you know
yeah. We're a
socially
bunch of
fluid, and
hypnotists. We haven't seen each other all year, and
or a hypnosis conference. Yes,
yeah,
exactly. So there's different vibes in different rooms,
very
but it's
different.
not. It doesn't have to be explained from an auric kind of
Yeah,
resonance or something like
it's
that.
kind of cool that people have come up with different ways to describe it. And
Sure.
I use orc stuff all the time because it's pretty freaking good. It's not going to pass science muster, maybe. I mean, people will debate that since we are electromagnetic and blah blah blah, and the heart
But
puts
can you
off. And
measure those things, or is it more, yeah, more
a lot of
like
people say you can.
exteroception than
Yeah,
translating into state? Hard to say, but if we can
yeah,
start
we're
getting
getting
measurement
closer.
of these things, yeah,
We're
right, then we can sort of rule out certain theories and
yeah,
support others. But certainly there's a phenomenon there. So I think,
yeah,
when I think about science, some people think of it as like, oh, if the theory's no good, then the phenomenon doesn't exist. That's bizarre,
the
right?
opposite.
Like,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, if something's actually happening and we can observe it happening, it's a matter of how do we explain that thing. It's not a matter of does it exist or not.
yeah.
Um, yeah. So like in
Haven't been,
hypnosis and
it
NLP,
turns
it's
out animal magnetism wasn't it.
right. Yeah, it's not animal magnetism.
But does animal magnetism rhyme with attachment theory? Hmm,
Hmm.
kind of seems to.
Right.
And are mirror neurons a thing? Well, they've been researched for 10 years and the verdict is still out. They haven't been
Hmm.
falsified, disproven, any of that. There does seem to be something to that
Right.
research.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think
Totally.
empirically, or my gut sense as a hypnotist is, fuck yeah, mirror neurons are extremely real. Like that's
Yeah,
my
there's certainly
job is
something
to,
to it, whether it's those specific neurons or not. Yeah, like, if you start matching and mirroring the voice tone, breathing, gestures, and so
yes,
on of another person, you get into deep rapport with them.
yeah.
And that is something that, I've proven over and over for myself, just experimenting and working with clients and so on. One of the things we do
Can't
often as
not do it
hypnotists
now.
is,
It's funny. I notice
I
myself like
know,
mirroring, like, oh, I'm mirroring this little old lady right now. You know?
right? Right? Yeah, sometimes, yeah, it gets to unconscious confidence. Right.
Oh, there you go. I like that's right. Oh, thank you. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. I give myself a little credit sometimes
Yeah.
for,
You got that skill now. That's good.
I got that skill at this point. This is probably good for this talk. I'm going
Yeah.
to read through this list. If anybody is interested in still watching, uh, you can look up the two streams hypothesis. Great entry on it in Wikipedia. Great place to start with it. So that's the two streams hypothesis. And if you want to go deeper down the rabbit hole, you can find lots of papers. But let's go over just a couple of the phenomenon with it. So
All right.
the what system, and I'm looking at my other screen, so that's why I'm. So where is visually guided behavior? What is recognition and identification? Which makes sense. What is that?
More the meaning. Yeah.
And then meaning, I think for me, meaning is very slow. I'm
Hmm.
like my wife is a fast meaning processor. If we're driving somewhere, so if I'm driving with me and my wife, I'm using up a lot of wear bandwidth to keep us safe while we're driving. And she knows if she comes at me hard with a hard what semantic question, it's going to take a while for Jimbo to get back to her.
Right.
We've been married long enough now, and I've told her, oh, I think I figured this out recently. It's because I prefer where processing, and you prefer what processing. So she's a
Interesting.
very semantic thinker.
Hmm.
So the classic thing would be like a where processor is probably an athlete,
Hmm.
and a what processor is probably a lawyer,
Right.
or somebody that's um, makes a living on meaning, semantics, maybe writing, maybe something more in that, or could be an engineer. Um, Lots of factors go into all that, but I think as a, oh, and then I'm going to back up and go
Okay.
into like, what's the speed of those things?
Hmm.
So the what speed is relatively slow compared to the where speed, which is relatively fast. Makes sense evolutionarily, right? You're out uh, having to protect yourself for survival. That's a where thing. That's what's going on in the environment.
Situational awareness. Right. Yeah. You want to
Situational
jump when
awareness.
you hear a sound before you determine whether it's from a safe thing or not.
Yeah. And then the next category, they call it consciousness. You could also say attention. Uh, so what processing is high consciousness? Meaning you're thinking about it and aware that you're trying to figure it out. Where consciousness is typically low. So one way we see this is if you ever go to a communal dining room, like where I work, communal dining room for our residents. We've got 30 something residents. Everybody sits in the same place every day.
Every day.
You probably sit at the same spot. Your wife, that kind of thing. You think of your family dynamic. Dad sits here, mom sits here, whatever it is in your social arena. If you solve the where problem, it takes less wattage to just do it again, default to that's my seat. And people get snippy about it, right?
Oh yeah.
It's my seat.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. I
if it's
remember
solved once, it's
one
one
time,
less thing,
yeah, one time went to the movies, and now the movie theater have like you pick your exact seats like on the plane or something. And
oh,
somebody
wow.
was sitting in our seats, but there were tons of open seats.
Right.
It took me a moment to be like, it doesn't matter. I'm
Yeah.
not even going to interrupt them. We can just sit right next to them. It's not,
Right.
there's like 1,000 seats or no, whatever, 50 seats in this theater that are open.
And we all know if you do, and there are times when you have to, excuse me, you're in my seat.
Yeah.
It's always uncomfortable.
Always
There's
uncomfortable.
always a pause. The person is doing a search, and we can see it as hypnotists. We're like, okay, here comes the transderivational search.
Yeah.
The worst thing is like if they feel threatened and they react.
Yeah. Yeah.
But most of the time, it's not that. It's this is going to take a moment. Now here come the explanations, back and forth towards resolution,
Right.
and it takes time. So the default is it's easier just to aware process in the background, not be aware we're doing it, and call it good.
So it's more unconscious processing that
More
aware.
unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then here's another one, frame of reference. So what processing tends to be object centering? That's interesting. So what is it? Well, it's this new thing called a phone. It's
It's an
really cool.
object. Yes. Right.
Yeah. And the where frame of reference is me or you. You are your where reference. World going out from you being in the center of your own world. Yeah, makes total sense. Here's another one. So visual with the what processing, it's focused, right? Makes sense. Where processing is peripheral, it's environmental.
So this give me a couple of thoughts that I want to share. So one is with the frame of reference. Interestingly, so within NLP submodalities again, one of the things I realized, I wasn't necessarily taught this in my training, is that you can either change the objects out there, or you can change the perceiver. For instance, let's say take size as a submodality. So
Yes.
If you have size as submodality, you have a picture out there of something. You can change the size of that object to be bigger or smaller, or you can grow as the perceiver to be bigger or smaller relative to that. And those do different things. I've noticed that.
Super plastic. I love it.
Yeah. So those are two different things. And then with the awareness bit that you were just mentioning, that also is interesting to me, because there's meditation techniques, for instance, that focus on an object, and it's like a narrow focus. Like, notice the breathing, the sensations of breathing around the nostrils, and then there's open awareness kind of meditations where you open to all of the senses in a wide way.
God.
One of the simplest ones being with visual, like opening to the peripheral vision, seeing the entire visual sense, but it also is often like physical space around you. Those seem to do different things. So
that's the what and where right there in meditation.
Yeah.
And when we train ourselves to do that, then they're not all glommed into one indistinguishable ball. But over time, it becomes like, oh, I'm in Jimbo's cranky right now and I'm fixated in this way. I need to become open, or,
Right.
whatever's going to serve me in this moment.
Yeah. And
Or
what
I'm
I've
too open
noticed is
and I need to get stuff done.
people tend to gravitate towards one or the other. Like they'll
Yeah.
try like a focused meditation and it won't work for them. And then they'll try an open awareness meditation. It'll be like easy and peaceful and no problem. Or vice versa. They'll go
I had
out and
never
they'll be like,
realized that.
I'm too
That's
spacey. And then they'll do a focus. It's like, oh, focus, easy.
This is why we're doing this.
Yeah.
It's so cool. It's like I just came across this super recently. I
Yeah.
haven't thought it through at all. And
It's interesting the
I've got
parallels
it
in
as
these
an
different
extra,
things.
like I got to do I'm pleased. I'm thrilled to be doing a 2 hour presentation.
Nice.
And, I'm like, do I have enough material? I'm like, fuck yeah, because I could talk about what and where for an hour,
Got more than enough. You have to cut
you
it down
know,
for 2 hours. Yeah.
because it ain't me talking, it's the room talking, that's my intention, is to elicit from the room
Yeah.
as much as possible while guiding it and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
While going
Cool.
into the other stuff.
Well, I hope you have a lot of fun. And are you finished with your list, or do you want to keep going?
Let's see, there's another interesting one. There's one or two more, but there's two great ones. Holy
Okay.
smokes. Sensitivity. So what, let's see, what is geared towards details? Where is geared towards, what do you think?
Uh, Context or something like that.
Think about eyes, and what are what are some of the things that eye movements do? What kind of eye movements can you have?
Um,
If you're
I don't know. They can
detail,
move in all directions. Yeah.
motion.
Motion. Hmm. Oh,
So
totally. Yep.
detail, focus,
Hmm.
and then motion.
Right.
So the dorsal system, the wear system, is motion. Uh,
Which would also make sense for detecting predators, in the space before you know whether it's a threat or not. You're aware
yeah,
of because there's some movement. Yeah.
bingo. And then memory. So again, what and where.
Hmm.
So what is long-term storage, right?
Hmm.
I'm about to show you something. What was that?
Oh, I don't know. No,
Okay, one more time.
no, it was a pen.
Oh, yes. How did you know that?
I've seen many pens before.
Oh my God. Is that a Sharpie S gel?
It is a Sharpie gel.
The best pens. These
The
are the best
exact
pens,
pen.
everybody. It's Duff and James approved.
This is turned into a pen commercial for
Oh
Sharpie
my
gel.
God. But yeah, because of long-term storage. Now, do you need long-term storage for where? When you're in the place? No.
Hmm.
Now, can you evoke it? Your childhood home, what the
Hmm.
front of your house looks like,
Yep.
what your favorite pair of shoes look like. Yes. Um, but in this sense of going out and walking around the block,
Hmm.
it's short-term memory, like it's immediate stuff. You're
Right.
walking through the environment. So cool.
Hmm.
And there's a few more and lots of research, and
Cool. Good stuff.
but I'm digging it. In part, I want to share one last thing. The biggest book outside of the Gutenberg Bible that I've ever seen, Stephen Grossberg's Conscious Mind, Resonant Brain. This thing is a beast.
Oh my
It's a
lord.
beast. It's painful, but it's so delicious. Random chapter: How the Prefrontal Cortex Works.
Hmm.
And he'll tell you. So this is the dude who came up with adaptive resonance theory in the 70s, maybe early 80s, late 70s, with his wife, Gail Carpenter, the two of them. And that's a big chunk of my topic, but it's the interweaving of top down, bottom up. So memory input meeting sense input, telling you what to do next. You wake up in the middle of the night to pee, and you don't have to turn on the lights in your own home because you've got a spatial map and your
Mm.
physiology knows how to do it. And then bam, you run into the wall because you're at a hypnosis conference and you forgot.
Totally.
So you've got to go from memory to immediate sensory input, and
Mm.
that's called adaptive resonance. I'll be spending a lot of time on that because it mimics association, dissociation, foraging, all these things. I think explain what hypnosis is. It's really the ability to think one thing while doing another and to forage for a better resource than the one you're currently have uploaded, because we associate and dissociate all day long. Like psychologists might have over pathologized it and made it scary. Oh, they're dissociated. And yes, it can be to extreme levels, but it's more a very natural thing. How else could we do it? You have to be able to stop doing one thing and do the next. You have to
Right.
dissociate out
Step out of something,
to go
dissociate
into the
from it
next.
in order to associate it to something else. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, we've probably talked enough, but that's
All right.
framework for
Yeah.
my talk. And
Well, good stuff.
super,
Good stuff, James. I wish I was at Hypnothoughts this year. I would come
I'm
to your
kind of
talk, but I'm
bummed.
not going to be there this year.
Yeah.
Next year, I'm planning on coming back. I'll teach something like I
Yeah.
like to do,
Hey,
if they accept me, of course.
yeah.
And
Yeah. So you've
yeah,
you've done the gig before with
I've
in
done it many times. I don't know,
oh
maybe
cool.
4 or 5 times. Yeah.
Nice.
Um,
Okay. Good.
so I do love talking to hypnothoughts. I took a break for COVID, and last year everyone got sick. Hopefully nobody gets
I
sick
heard
this
I heard
year.
about COVID. Oh yeah, I
Hopefully
got
nobody gets too sick this year. But yeah, last year everyone
the
got sick,
80s
and
party killed us.
oh yeah, yeah,
That
yeah.
was
My friend Antonio, he went. He was sick on day one, so he must have gotten it right before he left, and just up in the hotel for 8 days, and
oh
not
boy.
great.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't think
This
it's as
year
much
was
of a
much.
risk anymore. But some people probably come down with colds and flus and COVID.
Yeah,
And
I'm
but try to stay
quadruple,
safe. Wash your
quintuple.
hands.
Yeah,
Don't
right.
cough on people, and and have a good time. Oh, James, your video froze. Well, just in time. I'm just going to stop
Now,
the
I guess
recording.
you
Okay, no, there, your video's back.
okay. So you'll post it or something like that?
Yeah, I'm going to stop the recording right now.